Today we're working on grid method. We've already made 1 inch by 1 inch grids that match our inspiration image. If you wanted to do an enlargement, this grid on your good paper can be measured out to larger squares. So anytime you're working with grid method, it's important to understand that this is here to help you draw accurately. This is going to be mainly outlines. We're not doing value or any of the other special features. So right now I'm going to go square by square and row by row. So right now, if I look at square number 1, I can see a shadow in that area. You probably can't see, but there's also little more insignificant little shadows here. Right now, I just want to get the basic information. All of the fine detail comes later. So for right now, I'm going to move from left to right. So for right now, I'm looking at each square. And I'm going to zoom in here so you can see what I'm looking at. Where in that square does that shadow fall? Some people like to outline details ahead of time on their actual picture. If that helps you to make your outlines initially, that's fine with me. I think that, what works for you is what you should do. Okay, so here is my square number 1, and here is square number 1 here. I'm going to go ahead and label it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. This is going to be A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Very helpful to understand your grid. All right, so now I'm going to work on making the lines that I see. This shadow does not start at the top corner. In fact, it goes down a little ways, but not exactly halfway. Sometimes it's helpful to make a little smaller grid when you're doing difficult parts. This is not a difficult part, but it helps to break it down into quadrants. So in this little area, and I start simple, I'm just giving myself a real light outline to show where that shadow is. Then I can move on to the next square. This is where I start to see Moana's hair. So in that little square down here by the corner, I'll zoom back out. Down here in this little corner here is where we start to see a little bit of her hair. So for when you're doing this little drawing, I only see a tiny bit in this space. Well, I'm going to draw what I see. I am going to try to forget that I am actually drawing Moana. For right now, all I'm thinking about is what lines do I see in this square? Heads up! Now I'm going to move on to the next one. So what I'm doing here is I'm starting to draw my next little shape, which it looks kind of like a mountain. It does not go all the way to the top of that square. Kind of starts a little bit lower. And then I start to kind of bring in that slope. I actually start to see a little bit of Moana's face in this image. So I'm going to see where it almost starts about halfway across that little square. And I'm going to give myself a little bit of information there. Notice that I'm not doing any shading at all. That's really not what this is for. What I am going to do is give myself my basic outlines. I see some areas where the hair is a bit darker. I'm going to go ahead and show those areas on my drawing. I'm outlining the areas where I see a little bit more detail in her hair. So now let's compare the two. I'm going to kind of fold this over so you can see, and I'm going to enlarge it so you're starting to understand the point here. The point is that you are no longer kind of focusing on the picture as a whole. You're focusing on these little 1 by 1 inch squares. So if you look here and you compare, I'm getting basic shapes and outlines. right in here, I start to see her, where her skin is for the side of her face, but I don't have any shading. That is sufficient for understanding grid method.